Welcome to the Three Face Podcast. My name is Joe LaLeune, and today's guest is Andrew Russell, a former Canadian Olympian and represented Canada in the 2008 Games in Beijing for Canoe-Kayak sprints in the C2 1,000-meter men's category, where they finished fifth overall. He has converted his competitiveness and his drive to the world of business and entrepreneurship. He has set up businesses like FanFit to help raise money for other Canadian athletes looking to pay for travel, coaching, nutrition, and everything else they need to be at their best. He's pivoted recently to work with his wife, the founder of Made with Local. They provide healthy snacks all the way across the nation. And we talk and dive in deep on what that transition is like after sport, how we can apply a lot of the skills from sport towards other pursuits. And of course, as always, every time I touch base with Andrew, it's just a great conversation. I hope you also enjoy the conversation and get some takeaways for whatever it is you pursue, either in sport or after. Let's dive into the episode. Hope you enjoy.
The Three Face Podcast is starting now.
Okay, Andrew Russell, welcome to the podcast. Second time is the charm. Thank you so much for joining me. And how are you? What's new?
I am doing very, very well. Nova Scotia is just being hammered with a ton of rain, but we are a resilient bunch, and for the most part, we are in good spirits. So, yeah, life is good, man. Life is good on my end. We're doing tons of stuff with Made with Local, squeezing every last bit of family time in, as the summer is always fleeting, and yeah, no complaints whatsoever.
Nice. I had to put on my Nova Scotia hat to represent today.
Awesome.
Yeah, you guys have been going through it a little bit with the weather, but yeah, resilient as always. And let's talk a little bit about your backstory, because we kind of started with the idea for this conversation being around high performance sport and how it can relate to things later in life once that sport has passed. Obviously, that competitive edge is always underlying. I was able to work with Andrew a few years back and on a sort of sport-related event, which we can touch on a bit today too. But even there, where you were the organizer, you had to be competitive and do your best and finish, beat your colleagues and your friends and things like that. So let's dive a bit into your backstory and kind of how you got to this point.
Yeah, for sure. I think you nailed it. Kind of sport has been a defining element of my life probably as long as I can remember. I grew up, trying every sport. And I think that over time, I definitely adopted a mindset in that space. Notably, I was a national team paddler for 6 years and eventually raced at the Olympic Games in 2008 with Team Canada in the sprint canoe doubles events in C2,000 meters and 500 meters. And we performed really well, 6th and 5th at the Olympics in Beijing. So that was definitely a pinnacle highlight of that portion of my life. And from there, I did my MBA afterwards and got involved in sport administration. I had a sport fitness event called FanFit that you touched on that offered Olympic fitness challenge and events where people came together with some really great athletes, and it just was an awesome community fitness vibe. So definitely that whole sport mindset and challenging yourself and really being ambitious with your goals has always been, I would say, a part of my sport background, but it's definitely kind of bled into the next few parts of my journey after sport.
Yeah, so it's a sport maybe not everyone is totally aware of, but in Nova Scotia, it's pretty popular sport. It's very competitive. I knew lots of people who played, all the sort of regular sports, hockey and lacrosse and things like that. But a lot of them also did paddling, especially in the Chinook area. And what was that sort of like build up like to the Beijing Olympics and the community sort of around that sport in the Dartmouth area?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And you nailed it. So I feel like it probably applies to a lot of things. The idea of a training group and a sense of community can make something really foster into greatness, right? And
Mm-hmm.
for me, I was super fortunate coming up that I had all these incredible role models that I just got to follow and literally see in person there on the lake when I was training and learning to, keep my balance in a boat. I was
Mm-hmm.
watching Olympians and medalists, and some of the best national team athletes were right there, training, and I was able to see that firsthand. And later, I was fortunate enough to become one of those athletes. So for me, I was competitive through the junior years. I raced at the Junior World Championships twice and narrowly missed the medals in my second go in Curitiba. Would be 2001, and then I took some time, I would say, semi away from the sport while I did my university degree. And then I decided that I didn't want to have a what if moment later in life.
Mm-hmm.
So I gave it another full fledged go at making national team. And that kind of spiraled into those 6 years where I was able to make the leap pretty quickly, and then became kind of a perennial top 10 world challenger. And we raced at the Olympics there in fifth and sixth. So we had a great path. But I think back to your original question, it all starts with what I was able to be exposed to at a very young age. And it was seeing some great role models and athletes that I wanted to emulate.
Yeah, that's it's pretty huge in a sport where, like, just to be successful, it's also very helpful to know where you could go with the sport. That's something I experienced for myself with lacrosse. It was a new sport in the region. It was fun, and it's kind of something you could do when you weren't playing hockey. But it wasn't for me until I got to see higher level athletes perform, like playing the sport, to really say, like, oh, there's actually something to this. I could stick it out. I could get better at it and actually maybe compete at some level. So for you, how important was it to have those models and role models? And did you have mentors from those people to help kind of foster that relationship and the skill, and then ultimately like the competition or competitive edge to take it as far as you could?
Yeah, I would say I'm very lucky that I was able to be around a lot of those folks up close. So it's probably the same thing for lacrosse. And I think there's a special type of Nova Scotia athlete persona, maybe like even just, the most notables, the Sidney Crosbys and Nathan McKinnons. You hear the same stories about them attending hockey camps and just
Mm-hmm.
giving this incredible motivation and inspiration to these kids. So for me, I was able to see the Steve Gileses of the world, who is Olympic bronze medalist, Richard Dalton, Mike Scarola, close friends now, but back when a few years was a big gap when we were
Yeah,
younger, I was looking up to these guys and wanting to chase them and wanting to emulate what they were doing. And then when I made the decision, reference to that what if moment, I wanted to get back into the sport and really pursue it.
mm-hmm.
I jumped into a really incredible training group with Karen Furneaux and Richard Dalton and some like very top tier national team athletes, and had a coach named Chum Latarowski that was a world renowned coach that was there pushing me. So being part of the training group after also first kind of aspiring and seeing these role models, that was a big part of me being able to realize my dreams and pursuits at that level for sure. Yeah.
As having the right team members in the right places and everyone. I remember you telling me this before, that the members of the team also were great together. Like when someone needed to be funny, someone stepped up and do that. When someone needed to push the session, there was always someone there to do that. So how about the team, like the aspect of a team in a more individual sport, like you were in doubles, but I was talking to someone recently who's a triathlete, and they're, an individual within a team, but it helps really build your, the drive and balance of, when you have low days, and how to, get them up and make sure that you're at your best as often as possible.
Yeah, it's such a tricky balance too, and I feel like I was lucky enough to learn from the best on how to do it, because the journey is just like, if you can't enjoy the process, it's really, what are you doing it for? Those
Mm-hmm.
small competitive moments are few and far between, and there's so much endless training and,
Right.
and diligence and preparation, right? So we were great. Like the team had guys like the Budai brothers, Attila and Thomas Jr. from
Mm.
Mississauga. They were the crew before us that we were chasing and learning from, really. And
Mm-hmm.
they were just so great at instilling this wicked vibe on the squad. So we learned from them. They cracked the whip when they needed to be a more serious training session, but it was very light. Everybody was hoping that everyone could hit their best. And at the end of the day, when it came time to race off, you did so more individualistic, like you referenced, similar to,
Mm-hmm.
like I was going to say, running as well. You hear a lot about these running training groups where they push each other. At the end of the day, they're racing individually, but they're a team. And if they identify that way, I think, and we do too, we did and do, there's still like very much like a brotherhood, but and a team based thing. But yeah, it's something special. You can't quite put your finger on exactly what it is, but I think it's just a shared identity and joy of training together and pushing one another and wanting to be your best, but
Mm-hmm.
being genuinely happy for someone when they had success. And I think, I learned from some pretty great people and did my best to try and keep that tradition going.
Yeah, because really, like the training to competition is kind of like 99 to 1. Like the
Yeah,
amount of time you
totally.
spend in a training facility, in the weight room, on the practice course, on dry land, like the list goes on and on. So if you don't have a bit of camaraderie in those, team moments, it's going to be a pretty long, grueling, brutal ride doing that by yourself. I'm sure you've had athletes on teams before who are those kind of standoffish guys, and they think they're going to do it on their own, and sometimes those guys are successful, but you can kind of tell they're miserable under all of that. Versus some of those other, maybe the Bodai brothers, who are having a lot of fun when they could, and yourself too.
Yeah.
You always got a smile on your face, and you're always enjoying those moments. So being able to have fun in the 99, and so that when the one comes around, you can lock it in and go all in.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? I won't preach as if like I haven't had my moments where, you're in the doldrums and not having as much fun. And there is like such an obvious correlation to like when you're in some sort of like in the zone on and off each day and training and getting better. When you're having fun with it, it all just kind of compounds and things just work, right? And when you're not, you can only go so far and you can kind of carry that lack of enjoyment only so far in running through the motions until it kind of just wears you out. At least my experience, right? So yeah, I think I did the math once, just thinking about roughly how many strokes in a season. And it's like in the range of a million for like some of the most important races that would be a few hundred. So
Mm-hmm.
the number of strokes and the repetition, if you're not enjoying that part of the process, it's just like such a small moment to not enjoy the other part leading up to it, right?
And with your teammate, did you guys and your coach, did you guys have a bit of a like a mantra, or like something that was like an anchor for you when you did have those days where people weren't feeling great, and you needed to pick the effort up?
Yeah, I think that we were, maybe it was more direct at first, but I think it became intuitive over time. And it was really just the thing with a team based thing. And I assume it's the same for lacrosse and other sports. You have moments where you lose momentum or something like this, right? In a game and the flow of a sport. And momentum is a huge deal, right? In the ebbs and flows. And we found that we just tried to regain momentum. One person would try and motivate the other. You would put in a few harder strokes to literally get the boat moving the right way, right? So
Yeah.
that you could kind of get back in sync. So we just almost tried to overcompensate to break through those like metaphorical walls. And always, every practice, every time we tried to finish on positive note where possible. And that just gave us some spark of enjoyment, success, that you could carry that through. It was all about bridging to the next session or bridging to the next thing with something, even if it was a dull or challenging morning, because you're not always at your best, but if there was something that just got you sparked up for the next thing, we found that was really helpful. It's pretty straightforward, but it worked for us, and we stuck to that.
Yeah, I like this idea of like stacking wins, and or at least finding a win. So even on a
Yeah.
day when maybe it just felt like the worst session ever, couldn't, for you, maybe couldn't get the boat moving in the right direction, the speed was dropping or whatever it was, you're still, looking at the session, trying to find at least a positive in it. Maybe maybe a joke comes out of it, and that's the positive aspect that like, well, we're at the bottom and we can't do worse. Next time we'll do better, something along those lines. But you can kind of, when you have to do so many training sessions and so much repetition, and there's so much trial and error and practice, that if you're not looking for wins, you'll get lost. You get lost in the volume of all the the stuff that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Yeah, I think that that's fantastic. I'm sure you see that in part of kind of your regular practice professionally when you're training people. But people, I was just absolutely fed off the positive reinforcement, coaching, all the things. I was just looking for some sort of nugget to get excited about.
Yeah.
And yeah, the more of them you could get, the more it just carried through. And it just worked. Yeah, I was hooked on it. I won't even kind of undersell it. It was definitely something that I got excited about, and I think we both found that usually carried over to race day too.
Yeah. And then so on sort of the biggest stage at the Olympics, what was the preparation like leading into that?
Yeah, it was definitely competitive. Like a good long process to get in. We were racing quite seriously right up until the summer program, so we still weren't certain in terms of our entry in the Olympics in 2008 until I believe it would have been the end of May, roughly. We had to qualify through what was a continental qualifier between the Americas,
Yeah.
which took place in Montreal, and we were fortunate enough to win those races in advance as the nomination. I believe no, that took place. So we had to do that one first, and then we went to Europe and raced in Europe, where we were able to secure the nominations. And yeah, it was a that was a big push, and then there was kind of like a lack of serious racing or like major qualifiers up to the game. So there's a good 3 month stretch. I mean, I'm jumping into the technical weeds of the racing, but I just remember feeling pretty confident through the whole process. And back to mantras, Gab and I, who I raced with, Gabriel, we did a really good job, I will say, of supporting one another through the process. At least I felt very supported and very much like we were a strong team through. And yeah, we were in sync, and we got there feeling probably the fittest we had. We had peaked really, really well, and we were able to put down, I would say, some really strong races. So yeah, definitely felt like we were able to pull it together and yeah, show up when it counted.
Yeah, for a sport where it really matters to be in sync, that's definitely important to be on the same page.
Yeah, and I would say too, on a mental level, definitely I tried to keep a healthy balance of recognizing how big the opportunity was, and not to discount that. So just understanding that, every competitor was going to be digging to the absolute depths of what they had to show up. So I was kind of mentally promising myself each and every day, I would remind myself that I would have to be ready to go to a deeper level than anyone else. And I think just mentally reinforcing that every single session had me ready to go further than I had prior, for those races, to be able to make it first, but then when the time came to be able to race at our best.
It's definitely a unique scenario, isn't it? Where you are at your absolute peak, but so is every other competitor. And they're all have figured out the best possible way to tap into their maximum. And they're all trying to show up at their absolute maximum peak on the day. And
Yeah.
you know that, all you can really do is just do your best. So it's obviously a high pressure situation, but is it a relieving high pressure situation because you know that you just have to do your best?
Yeah, I think so a bit. Like the regatta progresses in a funny way. At least it always did for me. I felt more pressure during semifinals than in finals. And for us, we were really lucky. We advanced. Those were big pressure situations. We advanced obviously to both finals, and that was a lot of pressure. But it was almost like when it came time to the final, for whatever reason, the nerves were there. The adrenaline is just like you're literally almost shaking with adrenaline. And there's this to take you through the moment. There's this really exciting period at the time. I think that technology has changed, but at the time it was literally a slow moving ripple of a camera boat that came across all the lanes.
Yeah.
And you knew mentally once it hit each of the competitors, once it was crossed, you were getting the gun and it was going to go.
Right.
And we were in lane 7, I believe, if memory serves, in the 1,000-meter race, which is our first final. So by the time that camera had passed us, we've been waiting for it for a while.
Quickly after.
And then it wasn't going to be much longer afterwards. So yeah, it just kind of
talk about attention build.
Yeah, it's funny how time slows down and almost you're just like, wow, I've been thinking about this event for a year now, and it's all of a sudden there, and then you're in it. Yeah, it's pretty cool. We had a great experience, and I often think about you can't help but play those kind of big moments through your mind, but yeah, what an experience to be part of. Yeah, definitely one of those highlights you'll never forget.
This is a funny tangent reference, but Shaq has been DJing these massive stadiums.
Yeah.
And they asked him why he's got into DJing like this. And he said, this is the closest thing to replicating the energy of an NBA finals. And that's why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
So I think for you, it's probably something like that too, like such a heightened moment that very, very hard, if possible, to replicate. But it's probably cool to look back on and remember those big moments.
Yeah, I think that it's probably similar to you, and you're even in more like a physically kind of more variable stimulation when you think about lacrosse and that. And it does become, and I was fortunate not to feel like I needed to chase it a ton, but you do, like to the Shaq story, you think about those, like, how can I possibly be this hardcore in something else where I get that kind of energy? And it doesn't really exist, I guess. So, I mean, most athletes will tell you to soak it up while you've been through that experience because, it's definitely a chapter in your life. Not that you can't be hardcore in other things, but it's you're at your peak, it's an all-in moment where you just have to take it in. Definitely.
Yeah. How did the games change from the first to, I want to say, like the third and then the sixth for you? Obviously, first brand new experience, and then into your sort of last year with the national team. What was maybe the roles or the transitions or the emotions like as you went through those years?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. Because we came into that, I went to 2012. So 2008 was actually in the third season back from some hiatus. So it was a pretty quick ascent for me. So it's almost like it's happening fast enough with huge progressions each year that you don't take full stock.
Right.
And then the second time through in that second quadrennial, when I tried to make London and we didn't make it successfully, it was a different mix of emotions. I will say, definitely became more the leader on the team or one of the leaders. I won't say I was the sole leader, but I was one of the veterans in a different way towards the back half of that national team experience. And, I enjoyed that and I was more conscious of things. I think I definitely, towards the back half, had plateaued in terms of my ceiling in the sport. I'd kind of reached where I thought I could make it. And so I had some cognizance of that was the end for sure, regardless. And my body was telling me the same thing. So towards the end, it was more about trying to really take stock and enjoy it and enjoy who I was with. I was also, through the few years there, I was lucky to be able to spend a ton of time. My younger brother, Ben, who was actually a better paddler than I was and carried forward.
Hard to admit that when
no, I say it pretty quickly. He was so talented. Some stuff is just timing, right? And but he was fantastic. So I got to spend a ton of time with him. We actually raced head to head in a bunch of different races, but because we were the same side for paddlers, for the listeners, you paddle on a single side in our sport. So we never teamed up so much at the national team level, but had lots of good battles. And so, I just enjoyed the journey. And then when it was time, definitely there was some emotions in parting with the sport. But my head space on the back half had changed. We made a big run thinking we would hit some higher milestones and didn't quite experience that jump as much as we had hoped, and then became cognizant that it was time to let the torch be passed, right?
Sure. Yeah, let the younger
Yeah.
guys step in.
Yeah, totally.
So transitioning kind of away from sport now, obviously, or maybe not obviously, but for people who played sports, there's so many lessons that are learned from sport that are applied later in life. And kind of shifting now maybe into the business side of things, what was the first like business step or like entrepreneurial step that you took after sport?
Yeah. I would say the first entrepreneurial step I took afterwards was to do my MBA. At the time, I was very fortunate. I had some karting benefits from my national team days to receive some tuition support, and I jumped into a program at St. Mary's University Sobey School and did an MBA degree. I went into that full time right away to start and try and build my acumen and almost to have a seamless transition to have a thing right
Yeah,
afterwards, right? I definitely was one of those people that needed what the next thing was
for
to
sure.
just pour my head into. So, and through that experience, I became that much more interested in entrepreneurship. So in my second year there, I got into developing FanFit, and that became a big pursuit. I teamed up with a local entrepreneur, and that's how we connected through that endeavor. So that was probably my big foray into entrepreneurship, and it was an obvious connection of passion and business. And
Mhm.
yeah, it was a really great journey. And just briefly, what that was, I was building Canadian Olympic fitness events across the country in different cities, and it was bringing the top tier athletes across different sports and allowing people to challenge themselves across generic exercises that measured, like, ideally a quantitative full assessment of someone's fitness in an approachable way. So you
Mhm.
could do your speed, your power, your agility, balance, and endurance, and you have all those check marks, and it produced a score, and you could see how you did against some of the best athletes. And we had some really great
A
ones. We
lot of
had,
fun.
yeah, Castillo Clayton, a top boxer here from Nova Scotia, was at one of our events. We had Simon Whitfield out west. We had, yeah, just so many top wicked athletes. So we
Yeah,
were
volleyball,
pretty lucky.
swimmer, wrestlers,
Yeah, Jamie Broder. We had,
Sam Effa.
yeah, Sam Effa from the sprinting side. And what was really cool, and I'm not saying that to blow smoke for you, but I also got to hang with some really cool sport enthusiasts that helped me on the volunteer side or like partnership side. And that was cool too, to see how people just connect with sport in a really exciting way that gets you energized about what you're doing. So I was able to really feed off that energy through the experience of developing those events.
Yeah, completely. It was so much fun to be kind of running alongside former and current Olympians, and just you went all out. Like if you had any competitive edge and you're competing next to these guys, you went all out on it. I could say that for myself. But a really cool experience and a good way to connect community to sport. And for me, after, and I know I talked to other people after that, they were a lot more engaged in those athletes and watching them in the next round of Olympics and sort of following them in their endeavors leading up to that. So it's just a really cool way to get connected. And it was a fundraiser too, right? It was a way to raise funds so that athletes could pay
Exactly.
for travel and coaching and all the things that go into being for the most part, an amateur athlete, right? There's not too many sports in the Olympics that have professionals, so it's an expensive endeavor to do that. So really cool and for you as a way to give back to the committee that kind of got you to your pinnacle sport too.
Yeah, for sure. I think that would, you highlighted there, that fundraising, but also just like community connection these athletes were developing with the folks at the events was really meaningful. And I will say, like, one of the things I think looking back, and it's captured in different pictures that I have from the events, was folks surprising themselves,
Mm-hmm.
coming out to these events, getting really motivated because they're, meeting these high level athletes, and perhaps, they're not sure how they could do it. And just like a gentle little surprise of, I did a little better than I expected, or that was a little more
Yeah.
fun, or that was a little less intimidating than I thought it was going to be. And that was really special for me because I often heard from folks after, 6 months later that they had been really genuinely motivated from the experience. And that really, touched me deeply.
Yeah, yeah. And so like some of the events were like planks. That I think that probably got the best photos of
Yeah,
people who
yeah.
are like, holy smokes, like I beat a 2 minute plank, or I was planking right next to an athlete. Like that probably made some of the best photos. But yeah, it was definitely a cool experience. So after that, there was like a bit of a transition away from FanFit, and that's kind of when you got connected or partnered with Made Local, right? Because it was something that was already in the foray. It was something that was already being created and fostered.
Yes, yes. So my wife, Sheena Russell, is the CEO and founder of Made with Local, and it was inescapable. It was happening in the household. There was granola everywhere.
Yeah.
So Made with Local is a snack food company, and today we're found coast to coast in Canada, and we like to say we're making some of the like simply the best tasting clean label snack foods you can find. We're really proud of what it is today, but it comes from some very humble roots. Sheena was tinkering away with granola bars in our kitchen, and then she sold them at the farmers market. And yeah, it's a pretty cool journey, and that was happening at that level simultaneous when I was also doing my MBA as well as running FanFit. So there was a lot of energy in different pots for a few years.
Yeah.
And when I decided she was really growing Made with Local, and I felt at that time too, FanFit was looking at being across a lot of cities, and it just felt like the right timing. So I was pouring more into being, I would say, a supporter behind the scenes with Made with Local at that time. I'd spent some more time in amateur sport as a administrator in Canoe-Kayak locally through Atlantic Division, and then with the World Championships before jumping full steam with Sheena. And yeah, a lot was going on. It was really exciting. So one other cool backdrop of that is Sheena has a really natural passion for food, right? And she grew up on a family farm and has a father that's a baker and has been very passionate about baking and that kind of value add of things. So she has this wicked intersection of the two worlds, and yeah, it really produces a super unique, genuine passion and interest for what she's doing. And for me, it was also an exciting way to look at the business of what she was building. You can't help it but be like such a biased believer,
Yeah.
full steam in what your partner and love of your life is doing. But it was really cool to share ideas. And, I've never gotten sick of it. I always loved the product, never gotten sick of the product in a decade of eating it pretty much every day. But also seeing the growth, and growth is, like I was saying in the paddling side, I'm addicted to the idea of growth and the excitement it builds to see kind of hard work pay off. So yeah, it was hard not to feel the excitement and energy of what she was doing.
So from the development in sport and how you could kind of project where you wanted to end up, and sort of reverse engineer what needed to happen to get to that end point, how has that been applied to this Made with Local company?
Yeah. How has it been applied? It's another great question. Man, you're on fire right now, Joe. These are great questions. You're really making me think.
Yeah.
I would say that in terms of the application of my thinking, you know, and again, I will just really feed. Like when I jumped into the business, I want to just make sure I assert that it was very much to support something special that Sheena had already begun, right? And so for me, it was about helping achieve the scale that I felt and believed was really possible. And, it was at a point where there was a hole in operations, and operations for me eventually led to growth, which kind of traversed some sales, business development, finance, and a few different pockets, and also a navigation from what was social enterprise co-packing to now being self-manufacturing. So we packed a lot into
Yeah.
3.5 years since I've been there, and also, two of which were COVID lost years. So there was a lot going on. But I would say the biggest thing was just learning how to try and find strategies to scale where there was a reward, like a systemic reward similar to like the way you train and try to apply a technique that can give you the best benefit and to really hone in on that. We were trying to hone in on strategies and processes that would pay us the biggest dividend in terms of growing the business, providing the best quality to the consumers, and doing things in a way that the products would always stand forth as the highest quality, and then that would win the day. So like if we found out the efficient ways to work as a team to bring these products to market, if that was number one in the North Star and that was winning, then we could start to fill the other pieces. And that was like mission one, day one, was to find a way to get enough product to market, because we're constantly butting up against capacity. And going back to the sport thing, it was just, what can you control? How can you figure out those things that you can control to make a positive impact and change some of the habits and routines to keep the business moving in the right direction? And trying not to listen to the noise or the distractions, and hone in on what you could control. And I feel like that was, that compartmentalization that an athlete becomes really good at, to be able to separate and manage the stress. That was something I think that I had been able to bridge from my sport experience into the business. And I like to think it was helpful.
Yes, I mean, it sounds like it was. It sounds like it was based on how things have grown, but it also sounds like you came in as an open-minded teammate, the same as you would for a national team, and just kind of looked at it and saw like, how can I, add a puzzle piece that's going to paint the bigger picture. And to be able to digest the information is probably really important and helpful too, and a skill that you really do hone through sport, especially if you're going to be excel at that sport. You have to get more efficient at it, and that takes a lot of digestion and communication, especially when you're in a team sport. Also, by tying in that idea of like how to get a tunnel vision when you need it, and how to look more broadly when you can.
Yeah. I think that that's true. I guess I would also say the thing that I probably had to work at most through that period, Joe, was just trying to find some comfort in the ambiguity, because there is like an interesting piece about entrepreneurship for athletes is it's not necessarily the same. For me, the literal thing, it's not the same clear finish line. So it's not always a defined path that's obvious. So you have to try and find some comfort in the unknown too. And that was something that I had to work at, I will say, for sure. So it wasn't always completely like an obvious success each and every day. So there was definitely, seeing the wins was something I had to work at to reinforce finding ways to feel like you were having success, even when it felt like perhaps you weren't seeing the instantaneous response to all that hard work, try and pop up certain systems or operations and sales growth, right? And then it would always come and converge at like this rainfall moment, right? But I would say like the counterpoint was trying to just find a steadiness and a comfort when things were not always as smooth.
One thing we had talked about before as well was like creating feedback loops, especially when information or finish lines were really unclear. And, we maybe at FanFit, we started having those conversations of like, we have all this stuff that needs to get done before this thing starts. How are we going to find these like little wins to make sure that we keep engaged and moving forward? And then when you apply it to business, where there's like so many pieces that are always ongoing, you have to almost like look at them individually and create those loops that you can say like, okay, I want to accomplish this. This is where we are. We're going to try to take it to at least that point to then say, great, that was successful. Then you just keep building those wins like you did for paddling. You got to find those daily wins, because it becomes, with entrepreneurship and running your own business, is a lot of monotony, and a lot of days feel like there was no wins. So you have to like really kind of look for them.
Yeah, I think that that's great. And that's a very honest look at how you have to kind of get through this stuff, get through like what sometimes feels like a thick fog occasionally, just to get to that end point. And, the other thing I would say that I was able to switch on not too early on, because I really get a lot of energy out of people, and we were a small team at the time. So
Mhm.
kind of bouncing between some of the lessons I learned in sport by getting into a really strong training group, I started reaching out pretty often and trying to network amongst peers or people that I wanted to aspire to emulate, like in this CPG space, which was new, right? Trying to reach out to founders and people that have made it in the space. And I was really lucky. It's a really great community, and there's some folks that have lent me a ton of their time and just been really gracious with lessons learned. And so that allowed me to really accelerate my knowledge of the space by just learning from people really quickly. And then, our team too, the same point. And it's always a lesson to try and continue to learn from your teammates and put them in positions where they're able to really shine, and try and do that balance of positive feedback and
Mhm.
constructive feedback when necessary. But I will say we've been so fortunate with Made with Local to pull together a group of A-listers, right? And we've just, I'm first to admit I'm never the smartest guy in the room, far from it, but
You wouldn't want to be.
we've been lucky to bring in some really great people, and I like to think that we've tried our best to put them in positions where they can really shine as to their full strength and grow. Because I know from a personal standpoint, I'm always trying to grow and craving that opportunity. I feel like if you put people in a position where they have the tools to grow, and be a leader and be responsible and own and champion some sort of positive change, it's very meaningful. And I think everyone really does crave that. So the more you can foster that in that kind of team setting, definitely the better. And I think there's definitely been missteps by us, but I think on some big ones,
Mhm.
we've been able to really be lucky with some great people that have, shined.
Nice. Well, it definitely comes in with some confidence too, right? It's a bit of a, again, like with entrepreneurship and kind of living in the fog, as one does in Nova Scotia, um, and not really knowing if you're even walking or moving in the right direction. There has to be a bit of confidence that or to whatever extent that the process is going to deliver the result. And I think that for me, that's something I take from sport and like weight training, especially like when you're trying to get to an end result and you've kind of deciphered that, doing A through Z. These are the things that get you moving towards that end result, whether you can see it or not, or if it seems obvious that you're actually even going in the right direction. And I think that's really applicable with business too, and especially in a market that's quite new.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, I would say you're right. The metaphorical and literal fog is sometimes it does weigh you down, right? And it's just kind of getting back to those basics that get you to the
Yeah,
right spot.
yeah,
Yeah, no, you're bang on. I think, yeah, we always I it's easy to know that's the right thing. It's
yeah.
usually we
Now the
all know
thing
what
to
the
do
right
it.
thing to do is. Yeah, sometimes the hard part is just doing the thing, right? It's just not
Exactly.
agonizing about it, but doing it. So, yeah, the more you can just distill down to like, okay, what's the decision tree? What do we actually got to figure out and do? And let's get moving with the actual action plan. Yeah, that's where I like to be, where you're moving things forward.
I think one book that like really simplified that for me is The One Thing. And it was just it's not a very overly complicated book. It just helped me kind of bring in the idea of like distilling down a decision or distilling down focus to what is the one thing that you could do today that would make you successful for the day or make you or move the needle forward. And
Mm,
that almost like binary approach, I think, is when you are kind of like maybe a little blind in which direction you're trying to go, being able to do that can help in a big way because it's just going to keep you moving forward enough. And back to sport, it's the same idea. It's like, is what's the one thing I could do today that's going to make me a better paddler, a better hockey player, a better lacrosse player, whatever it is. And that breakdown makes it so much easier to not also get completely overwhelmed because the other side of that coin is there are a million things you could do today, and for sure all of them would move you in some direction. But
yeah.
how do you not get overwhelmed by that? How do you not get consumed by all those decisions and just not move at all, but where you end up with, paralysis by analysis, just trying to look at a million different options instead of just flipping that coin over and saying, what's one thing I could do and get done that's going to make a big difference or any difference at all.
For sure. Yeah. And you also need to to counterbalance that, like your point around not becoming overwhelmed. I think we have to understand like our own personal markers for when things are becoming too much or a little bit, and just learn to just have a little voice in your back of the head that's like, you're okay. You're doing a good job. It's okay if you're taking a 30-minute lunch break today. Like you just have to take it easier on yourself, because sometimes you need to recharge, or sometimes you need just a short little walk or some sort of break to just take it easier on yourself. We always, myself too, everybody has some sort of narratives that kind of recur through their head. And I think the more we can get on top of that, to direct those in the right way and take it easy on ourselves. That's also a constant space for personal learning for myself. And I think, being easy on yourself while also being ambitious is a pretty wicked 1-2 punch. If you can get that figured out, you're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, and just to relate back to sport again, I think it's that same idea of like, where's the fun occurring, right? If you're that individual who's standoffish, totally focused only on that one thing, where's the fun that's occurring? Why are you really doing this? Does this actually matter to you? Or are you just chasing the narrative or chasing the steeple or whatever it is? And at the kind of tricky balancing thing for atypical individuals and competitive people is, you do want to do your best and you do want to excel, and you want to try to find the edge and how to get ahead of your competitors. And that definitely carries into, business and entrepreneurship and everything else. But even like in sport, you have to take rest at some point. You have to recover. You have to be able to, step away for a minute, enjoy other things. Otherwise, we know especially for males who are in those high roles, they end up, not seeing their kids and their family, and it leads to all kinds of other things too.
Yes, balance is a bit not present.
Yeah, totally. So it sounds to me like you found a good balance with all those things.
I would say I'm lucky to have. I'm in a very fortunate position. I'm excited about where we are as a business. I'm excited about what we've accomplished. I think like everybody, COVID had challenging moments for us that we were able to realize what we were made of, the grit and resilience to push through the uncertainty of some pretty challenging spots. And, I have 2 beautiful daughters. I've got a loving partner. I've got a really exciting business I'm working on. So like life on my end is pretty darn good. And I try and push myself to help continue to make it a great thing, and enjoy the process on the way.
Yeah, that's awesome. And having having the space to do that is critical. I think lots of people are looking for that. What were some of the landmark goals that you wanted to achieve with Made Local through the last 5 years? And how did they, the goal was to expand and to grow, and how did the vision expand and grow with that?
Yeah, good question. So some of the key things, I think the idea of bringing the best quality, clean label ingredients, clean label products with transparent, ethical sourcing for us has been a big piece of the business. With Made with Local, we are a certified B Corp, which does govern, for those that know, it's a third-party validation of kind of the ethical practices of the business. And so for us, there's a few key markers. We wanted to do really great things while also kind of following 3 key pillars of love, nourish, community, building really meaningful connections, loving and working with people that we cared about, that we wanted to see farmers and food producers highlighted. And at the end of the day, we're a food company, so we got to make the best possible food, snack that people fall in love with, and then they fall in love with the brand and they feel like they're really getting something authentic. So for us, some of the big milestones were becoming a Canadian company that people fell in love with. It was about producing the best quality products time and time again at higher scale so that we could reach more people. And it was, yeah, it was a lot. We've hit a bunch of those. One of the biggest things over the past year has been, moving towards self-manufacturing.
Mm,
We were now in Windsor, Nova Scotia with our own facility, and
nice.
that was a big undertaking for us. And, if you're ever downtown Windsor, Nova Scotia, look us up. It's a beautiful, renovated factory that we're really excited about. So that was a big undertaking too. And now, it feels like we're really just scratching the surface on what we can do. We've got some exciting products in the pipeline. I think we really are making the best possible snacks people can buy that they can feel really good about feeding themselves and their families. Yeah, and we just want to reach more people and tell some really great stories. I will say that Sheena's done a fantastic job about really just highlighting some other voices. There's definitely a progressive element to the business and the culture and the brand we're trying to build, which is about that love and connection and community. And so that's translated in some of the ways we've tried to connect with social causes. Inclusion, different also farming practices. So there's been a bunch of key pillars at the community level and also at the agriculture level that we've tried to play a small role in fostering some positivity there and some
Mm.
traction. And we're just trying to do our part to build something special.
Yeah, that's great to hear because especially it being one of your main pillars, you want to find the best ways to give back, but are still authentic and they're still genuine, and you're not just going out and picking something that isn't aligned with your vision. I'll say.
Yeah, totally, exactly. Yeah, you want to make sure, like, we want to feel like we can really put our whole hearts in everything we're doing. Right, we're a female-led business. We're a certified B Corp. There's a bunch of things that we stand on that we're going to continue to stand on. I will say that, what started as just a Maritimes business, Made with Local, has expanded to be about Canadian sourcing from food suppliers and producers where
Mm.
possible. And so definitely some of that lens is widened.
Yeah.
And so has the stories we're telling about the communities that we're impacting, the folks we're working with. So those pieces have been really excited. We were highlighted. We did a global partnership with TikTok in Cannes, France, where we were at the Cannes Lion Marketing Festival. And
Mm.
so opportunities like that are really exciting to think about how we can bring some of the best snacks made right here in Windsor, Nova Scotia, to the world.
Yeah.
So, we definitely are. We have some exciting goals and ambition to build what we're doing with this company to bring it to more people.
And with the addition of the factory, and that must have been a bit anxious, kind of putting that whole thing together. But what are some of the biggest things you have gained by having the control of the environment where everything is being produced and put together?
Yeah, I like to think of it that we graduated in a way, right? So we
Mm.
were working with some partnerships. We wanted a bit more control, and I think COVID showcased some shaky ground where not having full control was a challenging thing, and it's one of these things. Serendipitously was the right time. So what it translated to in terms is the opportunity to scale and be able to take control and reach more people. And we also can be a bit more nimble in terms of the product innovation
Hmm.
pipeline and just owning the full quality roadmap for all the products. And at the end of the day, it really simply means we're excited to put more of the best products out to people that we can make and be more hands-on. So we're pretty excited about it.
Yeah, you get right in there. Quality control is at your level and disposal at all times.
That's right. We can do lots of hands-on quality control, as well, which is always good for the snack pantry.
Yeah, exactly. And it's probably a more move. It's probably a more maneuverable machine when you've got the wheel.
I think so. I don't know. It's
So
one
far,
new
so
step
good.
at a time. So far, so good. I joke, but it's been an absolute game changer for what we've been able to do. And the other cool thing is we've got a growing team. We've got we've got a fantastic team that are working at our factory. We've been able to become a meaningful employer in that area. And, it feels great to feel like people are excited to show up at our factory and be a part of everything we're doing. And they can share in the authenticity of the messaging and the brand. And there's a real pride. So it's contagious, the feeling that this team down there has been able to put it behind those products. So yeah, we're just, man, I'm gushing about it, but through and through, it's exciting to see, I cannot remove myself from seeing Sheena tinker with these products at our kitchen table to where it is today. Right. So you can't forget that journey. So I always just have to pinch myself a little bit.
Yeah, it's amazing to witness the whole thing from inception to current.
Yeah.
So what are some of the most maybe notable locations where people can get their hands on some of this made local?
Yeah. So if you're interested in trying our products, you can find us on the socials at Made with Local. You can find us at madewithlocal.com. We're also at a number of online retailers, notably check out Rise Market. If you're not familiar, Rise Market is awesome platform where you can find a number of really kind of premium offerings. There's well.ca, Costco.ca. You can also find us Loblaw, Sobeys, Fresh Street Market, Safeway, Coast to Coast, Shoppers Drug Mart. Yeah, you can find us all over. So we're definitely excited. Canadian retail online, madewithlocal.com.
Yeah, it's everywhere now. I think from the first attempt of recording this until now, I see it so much more frequently. I always recognized it when I saw it in stores, but now it's just like you can't go in a grocery store without seeing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we love to hear from people too. So if you haven't tried our products, please check them out at madewithlocal.com or at madewithlocal. And we're real people. We actually answer those DMs and all that stuff. So drop us a line and let us know what you think. And if you can't find us, let us know where we should be.
Yeah, good call. Andrew, thank you so much for joining me today. This is a treat as always. I always love chatting with you and catching up, and for you to share some information and what it really takes to be a high-level competitor and then compete at a high level after sport is always great insight. So I'm hoping lots of people take a lot away from this conversation.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, no, it's been great. I really appreciate you having me on, and honored. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of great listening to come. You got such a great lens on the sport and the business world, and just your training regimen and the amount of people that have really found success kind of under your guidance. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of good listens ahead.
Appreciate you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed the episode and got something out of it, please download, share, and leave a 5-star review so it becomes easier for other people to find our podcast and also take in some of this great information from our guests. Today's episode is brought to you by 3phasefitness.ca. We are expanding the website, so please go over there, take a look, and see what we've got for you. Everything from in-person training, remote coaching, self-directed programs, guides, blogs, and newsletters. Head over to 3phasefitness.ca, and until next time, I'm Joe LaLeune.